he wasn't supposed to see her. He was supposed to be a clean silhouette moving through rain and glass, insulated by an umbrella the size of a small sail, his mind crowded with numbers and names and a calendar that stacked like scaffolding. But the little girl folded like paper at the bus stop across from the building that bore his initials, and every memo in his head went blank. Adrian Hale's steps stopped with the kind of abruptness that alarmed his security detail. The city had done that winter thing where it forgot its own bones and let its lights float in puddles. The bus stop's advertisement pulsed in the rain, Novarus delivering life, casting a pale corporate glow over the small damaged shape on the bench. She slid off like a slow exhale, a string cut. "Sir?" His driver called, the car door open, offering warmth and leather and the insistence of being important. Adrian swore under his breath and crossed the street without an umbrella. The rain soaked his hair, turned his suit darker at the shoulders. The girl had a backpack with a torn strap and a cartoon fox patched onto the front. Her lips were parted and her breath was shallow and fast, her skin glazed with sweat that the cold tried to claim. He crouched. "Hey," he said, absurdly gentle for a man whose voice usually traveled through microphones and conference calls. "Hey, sweetheart." "You with someone? Hey," her eyelids fluttered. In the glow of the ad, he caught the shine of a medical bracelet on her wrist. He angled it to read type 1 diabetes. He didn't breathe for a second. The old panic rose like a ghost that knew his name. "Call 911, he said to the driver without looking, and when the man didn't move fast enough for a heart beating like this, Adrian barked it again, hard. He was suddenly, savagely grateful for his sister. For the countless times they had rehearsed this in kitchens and school gyms. He knelt till his knees found the asphalt, slid the backpack off her shoulders, peered inside. Apples, a wrinkled juice box, a crumpled paper with a drawing of a city that looked exactly like his, tall as if they were embarrassed by their height. He fumbled for the juice, tore the straw free with his teeth and coaxed it between her lips. "Come on," he said, his voice rough. "Come back." Her mouth moved, a small swallow. Rain spattered and hissed like whispering crowds. Somewhere, tires splashed. He held the juice for her, one hand behind her head as if it belonged there. He remembered another bench, another girl, much older, 14 and furious, hiding her fear under sarcasm. Emily, with her clever fingers and 1,000 bracelets, asking him with a fake yawn if he was going to watch her breathe all night. He had. He had watched and watched until one night when he wasn't looking, because he had exams and internships and the universe in his sights, she slipped somewhere he couldn't reach. The bitter geometry of it still calculated in his sleep. A siren began, and with it the world became smaller and simpler. Paramedics were all clean efficiency and warm blankets and questions, and he answered the ones he could like he had rehearsed this too. "I found her at the bus stop." No, she was alone. His eyes flicked back to the advertisement every time the blue light stuttered over it. Delivering life. As they lifted her onto the gurney, her head lolled, and for a second her eyes found him. They were the particular hazel that was too old to be on a face so young. "Mom," she said, not to him, and then quieter, "Bus 7? "Sir, are you a relative?" one of the paramedics asked. He could have said no. That would have been true. He could have stayed on his side of the glass and watched this be someone else's problem. He could have gone upstairs, into the floors where voice-activated doors opened into office forests and a team of assistants watered the ferns he kept forgetting he owned. "I'll follow," he said. "Please." He shoved his phone into his pocket. The driver said something about the board call, about Victoria waiting. He thought of Victoria Lang, all angles and clean lines and a mouth that flattened when people spoke about anything as fussy as compassion. "Reschedule," he said. "Tell them there's an emergency." He said it and he meant it. When the ambulance door thudded shut, he stood soaked and unfeeling, his hands empty and his heart white-hot with an old uselessness. The rain dragged his hair across his forehead like a mother's hand. "I'll meet you there," he told the driver. "Mercy General." "You want your coat?" the driver asked, but Adrian was already moving. He went up to the bus stop and picked up the Fox backpack. It was sodden, heavy with water and a small life. He ignored the look the security guard gave him as his shoes left dark prints across the Novarus lobby. It felt like he was carrying a question and an accusation. The building's elevator was a polished chrome coffin. He could see his reflection, handsome in the way magazines liked their cover men, but hollow behind the neatness. He wondered when he had become mostly reflection. The car met him at the curb. They moved through the city with the ease money buys, a ballet of green lights and sirens passing. Adrian held the backpack on his lap, his thumb tracing the Fox's outline as if it were some talisman with a secret map. Mercy General was the kind of hospital that couldn't decide if it wanted to be quiet or honest. The air smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. The fluorescent lights made the sick into paper cutouts. He had always hated hospitals and had spent his adult life in a war with himself about why. He didn't like to fail. The paramedic met him at the ER door, and for a moment Adrian felt a childish surge of relief at the professionalism in the man's easy posture, as if competence were contagious. "We got her stabilized," he said. "CGM on her arm's dead and she's been rationing, looks like. Hypoglycemia, but we caught it." "Where's her mother?" Adrian asked. The question was too sharp, too personal. The paramedic's face did a small business with shrugging. "We found no guardian on scene, social workers on her way." "Juniper," he answered. Juniper Alvarez? It was a pretty name. It hurt. He stood in the doorway of a curtained-off alcove, the Fox backpack await at his feet. The girl lay under a thin blanket, her face towards the wall like someone who had learned early that the world would rearrange itself if you didn't watch it. A nurse had put a small stuffed bear beside her, hospital issue, and it looked offended to be so generic next to the Fox, who had bites in its ears and the lived-in look of real love. A junior doctor in sneakers and a ponytail looked up from a tablet. "Are you family?" she asked, and her voice had the casual cruelty of bureaucracy necessary, he knew, but no less cruel for that. "No," he said, and then, because this felt too much like failure, "I found her." She looked at him again, properly this time, seeing what most people saw, the sharp lines of a suit that had cost more than a nurse's monthly salary, the face that had been on magazine covers. Recognition slid into place in her eyes. She didn't say his name, but she smiled with that fixed little smile that said she had thought it. "We'll need to wait for social services," she said, almost gentle now. "She's stable. You can sit with her if you like." He sat. He sat and listened to the beeps and the soft noises of other people's disasters happening in parallel. He sat and remembered Emily's fingers on his wrist counting breaths like oppositional poetry. He sat, and occasionally, when the curtain moved with a draft, he saw the hallways of Novarus in the glossy white of the walls and loved and hated his empire for its cleanliness. He checked his phone because he was a person who had built a world out of checking. There were 21 messages. "Victoria, 5 times, where are you? We cannot appear disorganized. If the Reuters interview cancels, the quarter will follow. Call me." He flicked off the phone. He had never done that before, and the quiet inside the choice was a kind of violence. He retrieved the backpack from under the chair and opened it, the damp zipper complaining. Inside, he found a change of clothes, a bag of almonds, an empty insulin pen, a worn-out library book about a fox who lived in a city, and tucked between the pages, a sealed envelope. The paper had swelled with rain. His name was written in careful, almost old-fashioned cursive that knocked the breath out of him. Adrian. He stared at it as if his name had done something treacherous, had gone out into the world and found a life without him. He glanced up, guilt rising in his face like heat, and found the young doctor watching him. It has my name on it," he said, "the way you might defend yourself against theft." "If it helps us find her people," the doctor said, "open it." His finger slipped under the flap. The paper tore with a sound that was too loud. Inside, there was another envelope, smaller, addressed to Juniper when she's ready. He set that aside with reverence. Then the letter. The ink was a little blurred at the edges, as if it had been written near water. It smelled faintly of oranges, absurdly, and of a perfume he had once loved because it always smelled a little like rain on hot cement. "Adrian, I hope this finds you quickly, but I have learned enough life to know hope is a flimsy engine. Perhaps this finds you not at all, in which case I will have told myself a story about Mercy. Do you remember the way the light came through the windows of that apartment on 14th we thought we could keep forever? The plant you killed because you tried too hard and flooded it. You said ambition was a kind of drowning. I think you were right. Her name is Juniper. We call her Junie sometimes. She is 8, and she has your stubborn tilt to her chin when someone tries to tell her who she is. She is a marvel. I know every mother says that, but I have learned to tell the truth even when it hurts. I did not tell you because you told me, in a voice that was broken with what you believed, that you couldn't be a father until you had made something that would not be taken from you. You said love had to wait until after the war. I told myself that made sense, that you would thank me for it. I was wrong, but wrong like a prayer, sincere and stupid and human. I am sick. The good kind at first, the kind people say you can fight with citrus and bravado, then the kind with a name that makes the room quieter. I have been fighting, but I am so tired, and there is a whisper in my chest that is not a lullaby. She has type 1, like your sister. Do you remember how you stayed up all night? I do. I think you were practicing. She knows her routines and she pretends not to be scared. We rationed because the clinic closed and the pharmacy said we would have to wait 2 weeks because supply chains don't care if children have birthdays. I think sometimes of the irony that you built a company for moving things, and yet we cannot move this medicine into her hands when she needs it. There is a social worker, Lee Patel. She has a voice that makes you feel like your heart can sit down. I told her that if something happened before I could teach Junie how to be a person with just me, she should find you. I told her you would say no at first and then live the rest of your life as if that were a sin you could undo. If you choose not to come, then please forgive me in the quiet of your own mind. I didn't tell you because I was selfish with your time. Perhaps that is a way to say I loved you without congratulating myself for it. If you choose to come, I will recognize the sound of your steps even if I cannot open my eyes. Nora, the room folded around him like paper. He read it again, and the ink grew teeth. He felt as though someone had shouldered him into a different direction, and his muscles had not learned how to move there yet. Nora. He thought of a girl with hair the color of late honey hugging a binder to her chest on a September day, telling him they should steal a boat and go to some strip of water where no one believed in promotions. He thought of a winter night where ambition had glittered like glass between them, and they had cut themselves on it and called the bleeding necessary. He had lost her because he wanted to be too large for anything to hurt him. He had done it with the clean precision of a surgeon. He had believed there would be time later to collect the parts of himself that still wanted warmth. He looked at Juniper and saw a jaw he knew from shaving too close to mirrors at dawn. How had he not seen it even without a letter? "Sir," the doctor again, softer. "We found a contact in her bag. Lee Patel, we've left a message." "Call again," he said. His voice didn't sound like he remembered it. He picked up the second letter, the one meant for a little girl's future, and slid it back into the Fox book like you might tuck a child in. He called Victoria. "We are at war," she said by way of hello. Are you listening? Evergrace is threatening to pull the order if we don't guarantee delivery by month end. I need your weight on this. Have we been cutting small clinic shipments to meet the larger contracts?" he asked. There was a pause. You could measure a life in pauses. "The model is designed to prioritize high volume on time payers," she said. "Crisp. We've discussed this." He closed his eyes. He could see the spreadsheet like an underworld map. "Mercy Clinic closed last quarter in South Moore," he said. He did not know how he knew. He knew because he had driven past a building with a sign half peeled in a part of town he had promised himself he would visit when he wasn't wearing a suit. "We reallocated, didn't we?" "We serve millions," Victoria said, and he could hear the strain under her. "We cannot bleed for one, Adrian. If we fall, the small clinics fall anyway. When did you become human?" he offered. He was unkind without meaning to be. He thought of Nora's letter claiming that he would say no first. He already had. He had said no to so many little emergencies because they were not efficient. Now his emergencies had found him anyway. "You can afford your charity," she said, her voice cold, "but the company cannot." "Where are you, by the way? We prepared a segment for CNN tonight. They want the face." "I am at Mercy General," he said. "I'm staying." "Are you in trouble?" she asked, the kind of trouble that meant reporters and stock dips. Yes, he said, the right kind. He hung up. Juniper slept, and a machine beeped reassurance, and the rain softened until it was just the hum of ducts and a city catching its breath. Lee Patel arrived tired and with the calm that only the practiced carry. She had a cardigan that had seen better days and a tote bag that had seen much worse. She listened to the doctor, nodded at Adrian as if she knew exactly who he was and nothing at all about him. She has no other emergency contacts, Lee said. We've been working with her mother, Nora Alvarez. There's some urgency. I know, he said and handed over the letter. Lee read quickly and then again, slower. She sat down and for a second let her face be a raw thing. Then she folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope as if it needed to be whole to be brave. Can you come with me? She asked Adrian. We need to find Nora. I'll drive, he said. They moved through the city like two strangers who had been given a secret to hold between them. The car smelled like the ghost of rain, and Lee fussed with her tote bag as if it could handle her nerves. I used to think there were clear lines, she said eventually. Between right and wrong, between rich and poor, between people who can be heroes and people who need them, but then I started doing this job. What do you think now? Adrian asked. That mostly we're all tired and making the least terrible choices we can. She glanced at him. And sometimes someone is exactly who they seem and also not. You are on magazine covers, Mr. Hale. Some people hate you for that. Some people worship. I need you to be a person. He thought of how good he had become at being a brand. He nodded. I used to be one. Mercy Hospice was a house someone had tried to make kind in the face of an unkind truth. There were quilts and cheerful art and a lemon tree in a pot that smelled like a promise. They were led down a hallway where the world narrowed, and in the room at the end, Nora slept. She was still beautiful, that old, lazy kind of beauty that made you think of sunlight. The sharp edges the world had given her had softened in the way paper softens in water. A gray scarf covered her head. Her hands were beautiful, always were, even when they were kneading dough or pressing flowers. His breath stuttered in his throat. Lee touched his arm and left. He went to the bed and stood there until he realized standing was a way of saying you intended to leave. He sat. Nora, he said. It's Adrian. Her eyelids lifted with obvious effort. Her smile was the same, crooked like a secret shared too late. You, she said, just that, and the room did that thing where sound pulls back and you hear your heart like a footfall. Why didn't you? He began and then stopped because the sound of his own grievance revolted him. She saved him. I had a thesis, she said. About time and the arrogance of men who think they can bully it. It was not peer-reviewed. It failed me. I should have known, he said. She looks like... He didn't finish because the sentence would end with the word you, and the room could not afford that echo. Yes, Nora said, and there was some pride in it, like sharing a good joke. She is very noisy about ice cream and art. She loves this city like it is a big brother who sometimes pushes her into puddles. Did you? I found her, he said, at the bus stop by Novarus. She had your letter. Nora's eyes watered not because of sentiment. It was the price her body demanded now. I told her, she said, her voice dust. If something happens, if Mama is slow, go to him. He is very fast. She smiled without teeth. Always was. He looked at her and saw the path he had cut through his 20s and 30s like the way a river cuts a canyon, beautiful and merciless. He had believed doing great things excused the failure to do intimate ones. He was a man the board praised for ruthless focus, and his life had the bloom of award ceremonies and the sharp loneliness that makes a voice echo when you say hello to an empty room. Nora coughed and it shook her, and he reached without thinking, the gesture unprofessional and decent and inevitable. She leaned back, the cough subsided, and for a beautiful petty second they were two people on a couch in an apartment with bad windows, learning how to make dinner without making a mess of themselves. There is a box, she said. In the closet, Lee knows, photos, papers. I wanted her to know I did my best, even when it wasn't enough. I wanted you to see the parts of yourself that weren't in a mirror. I made this company, he said, because his mind was stupid with the moment and reached for the only evidence of his existence he had cultivated. To solve this, moving things, making things make sense. You made a beautiful machine, she said gently. Machines don't love people, people do. I don't know how, he admitted, his throat tight. You know how to learn, she countered. She closed her eyes and he felt a child's panic. Juniper admires foxes, she murmured, drifting. Because they are clever. But I told her it's okay to admire rabbits too, because they know when to run and when to be still. You were always running, Adrian, maybe now you can be still. Will you, will she? He could not finish a question without taking something for himself. I am tired, she said. Then, with an old mischief that made the room bloom into a different year, I am not angry, not anymore. That should not flatter you, it is just work I did. Her eyes opened again, and in them was the kind of forgiveness that makes you wish you had sinned less. Be kind. To her, to yourself, not perfect. Kind. She slept then and did not wake while he and Lee tried to remember how to sit. He took the box because it was the closest thing to direction in a room dedicated to letting go. Inside were the ordinary treasures of a life, hospital bracelets that were too small, drawings with lopsided suns, a lock of hair tied with a thread, photos where the camera had not focused properly and you loved them anyway. There was a picture of him, too, from a magazine cover, folded at the corner. On the back, a child's hand had tried to trace his nose. He swallowed and it hurt. He had not known he was this breakable. They went back to the hospital, and Lee went to talk to doctors while he sat with Juniper, who woke with a start and then a careful, almost grown-up smallness that was like a hand you keep in your pocket so you don't show you have nothing to hold. You're still here, she said, suspicious of him in a way that made him like her terribly. I am, he said. You have rain in your hair, she observed. I do, he answered. She looked at the backpack by his feet. Is my fox okay? She asked, and it was the question that told the truth about children. They care about what they've already loved before they test you with the next thing. He is perfect, Adrian said and offered the fox. She clutched it the way people are supposed to clutch each other. I was waiting for the bus, she said after a moment, like a confession. 7 goes to the clinic, but then it was like I dropped my insides. You did, he said softly, and for the first time in perhaps his life, he didn't try to fix something with an explanation. He just sat. There were forms and clipped speeches. Lee spoke with a kind of mercy that seemed expensive. We can't release her to you, she said. Not without we need you understand. I do, he said. I would like to be there. Mr. Hale, she said, and when she said it that way, it was not the world calling him but a person. We will do this the right way. It will be slower than you want and faster than you're ready for. He nodded. Her mother. He didn't finish because a silence in a hospital is an admission. Lee reached for his arm. She's resting, she said. It was a kindness to use the wrong word. It was a kindness he would learn to offer. The next days unfolded with that frantic slowness of bureaucracy in crisis. He learned how to sit in ugly chairs and how to carry a fox backpack with an unself-consciousness he had never managed with his own briefcase. He brought magazines and then threw them away. He bought a stuffed rabbit too, because Nora had told him to admire rabbits, and he wanted to be obedient about something. Victoria called again, the wires of frustration in her voice twanging like power lines in wind. Your photo is everywhere, she said. You in an ER. Do you understand what it does to us when you decide to gallivant as a Samaritan? It looks like an admission. It is, he said. I am admitting that our model hurt people, that I signed off on a cost schedule that prioritized the wrong things. I want to fix it. By what? She asked, brittle. Sending handwritten apologies, delivering insulin yourself. We are a corporation, not a soup kitchen. By restructuring the supply to prioritize critical meds to clinics over profit margins from our biggest clients, he snapped. By taking a hit and being proud of it. The board will crucify you, she said. You could hear the fatigue under her anger. She had been balancing stacks of decisions as high as his since she was old enough to carry. They don't want a saint, they want stability. Then they should have hired a statue, he replied, surprising himself with the ease of the line. I will call a meeting. He did. The boardroom was a museum of restraint, white, clean, the art expensive but pretending it wasn't. They watched him like he might confess a penchant for arson. He told them about Mercy Clinic and supply chain reallocation and insulin like lifelines. He watched a couple of them defend with ecology metaphors and the others with hand-wringing. "Charity is good press," one of them said. "Hale's heart." "It isn't charity," he said. "It's a correction." "There's no way to appease activists," Victoria warned, which was her way of saying there's no way to keep trust while you grow a quarterly graph like a skyscraper. "I'm not appeasing," he said quietly. "I'm trying to save a girl." "Which girl?" A board member scoffed, small and cruel. "You can't save them all. You'll wear yourself out trying." He stood. For the first time, he didn't feel tall because of the shoes or the suit. He felt tall because he had finally chosen to be something that didn't require buy-in. "I'll wear myself out then," he said. The story broke anyway. Not because Victoria leaked it, though he wouldn't blame her, but because the world loves an icon fallen into a hospital, a narrative of atonement. Photos of him at Mercy, hair damp, eyes serious. Think pieces about the savior complex and the hypocrisy of men who run empires of logistics while children ration medicine. Interviews he didn't grant. A coworker he once liked emailed to say he was humiliating himself. He prepared to be fired. Nora died on a Wednesday when the city's light was that bruised color you get before snow. The hospice called, and Brian from security drove him there without speaking because whenever he spoke, it was about hockey, and this didn't seem like a day for that. She was quiet, like a room in an old house after all the furniture is gone. Lee was there and a nurse with a hand that had learned how to be a lighthouse. Adrian stood and wanted to say something beautifully forgiving. What came out was childish and perfect. "I am sorry I did not know how to love you when you needed me to." Nora didn't answer. She did not need to. The air held his words like a small animal, grateful and scared. He saw Juniper that evening, and she looked at him as if he could be both person and storm. He sat on the edge of her bed and told her her mother loved her like the sun loves leaves. Children are poets when they're safe. He was learning. "Lee says you might take me," she said, and the word was too big for her mouth. It felt like asking for a planet. "If you'll have me," he said, and he meant it. Her face did that sober adult thing again, the one it should not have learned yet. "Are you nice?" She asked. "No," he began and then surprised himself, "but I am trying." She looked at his hand, and he realized she was looking at the thin, pale scar by his thumb, the one he got opening akin with a butter knife when he was a student and too proud to ask for help. "Mama has a picture of you," she told him, like she was giving him back something. "It's on the back of a book, so you look too shiny, but she said once that you had a cut on your hand because you were trying to make soup and she laughed for 3 days, so I knew." "Knew what?" he asked. "That you were you," she said simply, and it broke him in a clean, necessary way. The next weeks were alternating currents, warmth and cold, paperwork and moments so human they made the paper rustle of bureaucracy seem like a bad joke. Lee came to his penthouse, and he saw it through her eyes, the chill of polished concrete, the couch that was more theory than comfort, the dining table that had never hosted a second plate. She ran a finger along shelves of books that looked purchased for effect and paused at the one that introduced him to a fox in a city. "Will you make a home or expect her to live in your office?" she asked. "A home," he said, and surprised himself by believing it. He took a parenting class in a church basement with a green carpet that had seen better sins. He pricked his own finger with a lancet until he stopped flinching. He watched videos on how to put a child's fear down without making it something she would carry forever. He read Nora's second letter and then put it in the box, trembling. "Dear Junie," it began in the same handwriting, the same gentle insistence. There were instructions and stories. There was a list of anniversaries no one else would care about. There were recipes that admitted when they had failed. There was a paragraph about foxes, clever and unashamed. He returned to the boardroom as a man about to lay down something he used to consider part of his skeleton. "I'm stepping down," he said. "Effective immediately, I need to be in one life at a time." "You cannot leave during a crisis," Victoria said, which was at least honest. She looked tired. He loved her a little for that. "You are the crisis?" "Then it's the only responsible thing to do," he replied. "I'll divest half my shares into a foundation to fund critical medicine distribution to clinics like Mercy." A dedicated pipeline we don't own, so it can't be leveraged. We'll set up logistics free of profit, but not charity, cost coverage, transparency. You could do that from here, she insisted, because it was the only language she knew. You could do everything? I can't, he said, and his voice was an apology and a relief. I've been trying to do everything for too long. The headlines did what headlines do. They made a narrative out of something too complicated to hold. Fallen Titan turns toward mercy. Novarus shakeup as Hale exits. Does philanthropy fix company sins? He didn't read them. He woke early to test basal rates and learned the courage of middle-of-the-night alarms. He learned the small things, how to braid hair poorly, how to pretend to lose at Uno without insulting a small person's intelligence, how to fold a letter back into an envelope without breaking it more. Lee called one afternoon to tell him the court had set a guardianship hearing. It won't be easy, she warned. There will be questions about stability, about your capacity. Are there any relatives who might contest? He asked, bracing himself for a sister or an aunt he'd never know. A cousin in San Mateo, Lee said. She called. She cried. She said she cannot take her because she sleeps in a one-bedroom with 4 kids and a husband who drinks his courage. She begged us to put Juniper somewhere with windows. He picked up the fox that had fallen behind the couch and brushed dust off its ears. His house had become an obstacle course of small things. He loved it. The courtroom was beige in that exhausting way institutions are. There was a judge who looked like he had once wanted to be a poet and a lawyer who wanted to be anywhere else. Adrian wore a suit he had never hated more because it made him look like someone who was trying to win. Juniper sat beside Lee, back straight as a ruler, and twisted the fox's ear like a rosary. He wanted to pick her up and take her somewhere that was not made of words and opinions. He could not. He answered questions about schedules and support networks, and the incident where a photo of him had captured him lighting a cigar at a gala while someone built a narrative about decadence. He talked about nights in hospitals and days in offices, and the way his apartment now smelled like pancakes sometimes. The judge listened. He asked Juniper if she wanted anything. I want him to stay, she said, nodding toward Adrian with the solemnity of a prophet. And if he does something dumb, Lee will tell him. Everyone laughed, and then everyone was a little embarrassed about what they had found funny. When the judge granted temporary guardianship, Adrian did not feel triumphant. He felt like someone had handed him a living thing and instructions that said, try not to break this. They celebrated by going to the aquarium because Nora had written that she had always meant to take her, and never did. The glass tunneled around them, and fish moved like detached thoughts. Juniper pressed her hands to the thick glass and followed a stingray with reverence. It was in front of the jellyfish, small galaxies pulsing lazily, that Juniper's hand tightened in his. He looked down and the world narrowed to the too familiar pallor on her face. She wobbled. He had the juice box in his pocket because he had finally learned that preparedness is love disguised as logistics. He knelt in a light that shimmered. He coaxed sugar back into a small mouth. He counted breaths and made his voice gentle on purpose. When the color came back, he pressed his forehead to hers, and it felt like a prayer he had always meant to learn. He did not cry then. He cried later in the kitchen at the sound of the dishwasher making its simple work noises. He cried because he had built a universe where nothing could surprise him, and now a little girl with a fox had surprised him into being a person. In the months that followed, his life was a serious joke. He made lunch boxes and took calls from a foundation that was learning to be exactly what it claimed. The Juniper Fund grew faster than anyone thought it could, not because he asked old friends for money, though he did, but because someone wrote a column about a bus stop and a letter and a man who had finally decided to use his precision to make something small and perfect. Victoria sent flowers once, white ones that smelled like nothing, and a note that said, I misjudged the market for decency. You were right about the clinics. We are recalibrating. It was her way of saying I am sorry. He kept the note pinned above his desk. He visited Nora's grave, which was a tree more than a stone because Lee believed in things that move. He brought Juniper and told her the ground was not hungry. It was a library storing love until someone checked it out again. You think she can see us? Juniper asked, which is what all children ask, even when they pretend they are asking out of curiosity rather than need. I think she knows, he said, even if seeing is not the word for it. On the anniversary of the night he found her, they went to the bus stop. The advertisement had changed. Where Novarus had once made promises with a font chosen by consultants, there was now a mural of a fox sitting at a bus stop under a night sky, waiting with the kind of patience only small heroes have. Someone had painted a little girl's hand touching its ear. Juniper clapped like she had seen a magic trick. They sat together on the damp bench. The bus hissed and came and left again without them. They didn't mind. I was scared, Juniper said without looking at him. Before that you were like those buildings, all tall and people get smaller near you. I was scared too, he admitted, that I was like those buildings, all glass and no doors. She leaned her head on his shoulder and he felt the weight like a truth. Mama wrote that you are fast, she said, but I think you can be still too. I think you can do both. I'm learning, he said, and it felt like a graduation into some quiet. He thought then of everything that had broken his heart, his sister and his ambition, and a letter that smelled like oranges and a bus stop with a small person collapsed like paper. He thought of mercy, which he had learned was not a word but a collection of acts performed by people who had decided not to wait for the right moment. The bus stop light hummed. Somewhere far off, someone made a decision that would never reach them. He looked down at the fox, whose ears were now repaired with uneven stitches he had learned to make. He rested his cheek on Juniper's hair, which smelled like apple shampoo and something he could only name as home. The city breathed around them. The bus pulled in with its brakes singing, and for once, on purpose, they let it go. They had made their own route. They would write their own timetable, late and right on time.